Welcome to QUARANLEAN, the show where we bring a little lean ensemble into your homes while we all wait for the moment when we can once again do it in the theater. I'm Blake White, and this is episode 9 of the online talk show, and I did it. It has taken me since March, but I have finally watched everything on Netflix. It really is a golden age of television. On July 29th, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster announced that many establishments and organizations could reopen at 50% capacity. Included in this announcement were adult entertainment venues. Since Lean is not a children's theater, I assumed that we fell under the category of adult entertainment. Well, at the suggestion of my wife, I did a little fact-checking and discovered with a quick Google search that adult entertainment is an entirely different situation. And I saw things on Google. I saw a lot of things. In the wake of the governor's announcement, many performing arts organizations were sent scrambling, asking questions like, is our audience even ready to return? How will we keep our patrons safe? And how do we make sense of a business model where we are only allotted 50% capacity? But there was one question that might not have been asked frequently enough, and that is, how will we keep our artists safe? My guest today tackled that very question head on. Kerrie Seymour is an upstate South Carolina-based actor and director who is also a professor of theater at Clemson University. Lean audiences might remember her from her performance in 2018's production of Who Am I This Time? And Other Conundrums of Love. Thomas Azar is also based upstate. He is an actor, director, and fight choreographer who starred in Lean's 2019 production of Barefoot in the Park. Together, they formed a movement called Not a Moment Sooner, which is a consortium of South Carolina-based artists speaking with one voice to protect their own health, wellness, and safety. Over the past few years, these fine folks have become not only colleagues, but also friends. So let's take a couple of minutes to talk about the artist's point of view with Thomas Azar and Kerrie Seymour. Thomas Azar, Kerrie Seymour, thank you so much for joining me here today on this incredibly hot South Carolina afternoon.
Thank you.
Glad to be
here. It is nice and balmy here too.
Nice and balmy. So where are you guys right now?
I'm in Greenville.
Greenville? Kerrie?
Greenville.
I'm just west of Greenville in Easley, South Carolina.
Man, big city folk.
Yep.
So I want to start this conversation from like a bit of a 30,000 foot view. And I want to, when we go into theater, when we go into acting, when we go into all of these different entertainment things, people don't realize that you can make your living in a way that doesn't always equal a moment at the Academy Awards, right? So why regional theater? Regional theater is a very specific place to cultivate your craft, to do your thing, to make a living. How did you end up focusing most of your adult work in the regional theater world? Kerrie, we'll start with you. I know you went to, you got your MFA from a pretty crazy good school, Trinity Rep.
Yeah.
And now you're up teaching at Clemson and working regionally. So how did that path come to you?
Well, I stumbled onto finding out about Trinity Rep. It was an ad in American Theater Magazine. I remember I was DJing my undergraduate college radio show. And while I was spinning one of the platters.
A minute. Let's stop right there and talk about that for 45 minutes. You were a DJ in undergrad?
Yes, on the campus radio station.
This is already my favorite episode.
But yeah, so a song was playing and I was reading American theater like the theater nerds do at 1 a.m. And I saw an ad for Trinity Rep. And so I ended up going there and studying there for 3 years. I really got to see how regional theater works and how important it was to its community. Trinity's in Providence, and it is such a part of Providence. and it shapes Providence, and it has the conversations that Providence needs to have.
So I went to grad school at the Shakespeare Theater Company's Academy for Classical Acting at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C.
A big
There's
name.
no grad school that doesn't love a long title.
It's all of grad school compressed into a year, which makes for a pretty insane work schedule, or class schedule. And towards the end of that year, my professors were asking me, what are your plans? And it was always, I'm going back to Greenville, South Carolina, which was a shock to a lot of them. I sincerely believe that locations other than major cities like DC and New York, Chicago, LA deserve excellent art. And I wanted to contribute to making excellent art happen in other places. And South Carolina, since we moved here, my wife and I 10 years ago, has really become home. And I wanted to make art at home.
When the governor announced on July 29th that all of these organizations that we so passionately believe in these towns that we call home, that we want to, as you, I think, perfectly said, Thomas, in some small way, try and make better, right? Said that we could go back to work. What was your initial reaction to that? I'll start with you, Thomas.
Well, I wasn't happy about it, which is an odd thing for me to say, perhaps in one respect, because I desperately want to go back to work. I want to go back to contributing whatever I can to making excellent art. When that order came out saying, okay, everyone can open back up as long as it's at 50% capacity, I felt like now is not the time. It's not safe. The more we learn about how the virus is transmitted, the more convinced I am personally that producing theater indoors in a shared air environment where actors and potentially singers and dancers and audience are sharing all this air for hours, there's no way to make that safe right now, absent a vaccine. And since we don't have one right now, I can't get behind the idea of opening doors to indoor theater spaces.
As you guys started to come together and have these conversations, how did you try and avoid some sort of idea of we're not going to come back to work until it's safe, but I don't want to imply that we aren't still supporting the organizations that we love so much, creating like an us versus them situation?
We went through several drafts of what became our open letter. And one of the bullet points was to tell us, the collective us that would become the undersigned, we want the theaters to tell us what we can do to help champion and support your organization. That was there from the beginning, because, yeah, like you said, we don't want us versus them kind of mentality built into the spirit of this letter. Our industry is in real crisis mode right now. I don't know of a single producing organization that's not at this point. And I don't want to make the situation worse by getting a whole bunch of individuals to say, well, I'm not going to work for you anymore. So right from the very beginning, we wanted to make sure that point is underlined, is bolded. I think it literally is bolded in the letter.
We recognize that if a theater produces work now and people get sick, it's just going to be that much longer before we can really come back.
Yeah.
So that sense of just taking a chance and just seeing what happens, it feels good kind of in the short term, because we want work. Theaters want to be bringing in some kind of revenue, but at what cost? I think personally, my belief was if we produce work now and it backfires and people get sick, we are setting ourselves further back than we already are.
As an actor, I lack a lot of agency in determining my career path, and I am very dependent upon a number of employers in various locations. And if one of them has put out the message, we're not going to hire people who have signed this letter, a letter that says, I want my health and my coworkers' health and my audience's health first, then that gives me a lot of information. And while I might not have a lot of agency, ultimately it is crossed off the list. Like I at least have that much agency to say, I'm sorry, if we can't see eye to eye about the personal health and safety of performers and technicians and audience members and patrons and ushers and the myriad people it takes to produce live theater, if we can't meet on that common ground, then I will take my tiny little bit of talent somewhere else.
I think you also mentioned the fact that everybody else that signed that letter would have that person's back.
Absolutely.
So not only is that person learning about that company and can cross it off their list, a bunch of other people can do the same.
With so many theater makers, right, this is like knit into the fiber of who we are. And so to not be able to do the thing, and I assure you it's not just about the clapping at the end, it's about the whole process of collaborating with people, about sort of creating these temporary families that you make while you're working. And we want to come back so badly.
I've spoken to both of you about projects that I hope to do they aren't the same project, but there are multiple projects that we've been speaking about that we're hoping to do in the coming years that are exciting to me for a myriad of reasons. So I guess my last question is, if you don't want to do them, just tell me. You don't have to go through all this. It's a lot of effort.
I really want to do it.
I gotta make something.
Kerrie Seymour, Thomas Azar, you guys are great. I applaud what you're doing. I have been and will continue to try anything I can to be a part of it and support it. And, to me, it's not, Kerrie, to your last point, it's not unlike the mask debate. I don't want to wear a mask. Masks are uncomfortable, it's hot outside, and I don't like them. I want to be making theater. It is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel like that's what I'm hearing from you. This is not a desire. This is just a necessary reaction to the current time. Is that fair? Is that a fair way to say it?
You just kind of put the mask on and move forward until you can finally take it off. And so we're just kind of sticking together, trying to make the right choices until the old ways can come back to us, hopefully better.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you, Blake.
Well, that's it for this episode of QUARANLEAN. I want to thank my guests, Thomas Azar and Kerrie Seymour, as well as our production sponsor for this episode, Boys Arnold Wealth Management. One day I intend to have wealth for them to manage. Gratitude and thanks, as always, to our producer, Erica Kramer over at Sleeves Up Productions. My apologies for running out of time in this episode to the bard himself, William Shakespeare. We'll see you again in 2 weeks, everybody. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay sane.